Hello again, everyone. I am Kim, and this is Teach Me to Sports Bet, where I am going on the journey from zero to something in the sports betting world. I don't know what that is. And of course, I always have with me my trusty teacher, my colleague, my friend, and veteran sportscaster, Dave Bontempo. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Kimmy, how are you?
You know, I'm doing good. My big lesson from this weekend, Dave, was I don't like losing.
Yes, but you did a lot of scrambling and you didn't lose very much.
No.
But your free bets did something for you, right?
Yeah, I only lost $1.98, but my two early bets and my parlay did not come it through for me. My Cardinals, they failed me again. I'm going to have to rethink betting them because I don't like it. And then I really thought San Francisco could have pulled that out, and they just floundered a little bit. So I lost both of those. And then, you know, I took my parlay. I did my betting homework, which I actually thought was a lot of fun. I
thought you would.
I really liked that. I might even try it again this week, although I might give myself another challenge or something. But I bet the first two teams on the parlay I bet was San Francisco and the Cardinals. And as I was talking about it when I was going over my early bets, I realized that maybe that wasn't such a smart move, that maybe I should have put some other teams in there so I didn't tie my parlay to the other bets that I was already had. I don't know if that was the right thinking or wrong thinking.
I would say that if you want to look at it going forward, you maybe could do one of each, where you say, okay, I'll take one parlay with none of those teams on it, and I'll take another parlay where I'm going to use them as anchors, where whatever your favorite two bets were on that money line parlay, you use them and maybe even intersperse some other teams. Maybe you even take a separate one with those two teams as an anchor. But your other bet, the four that don't have them on there, that's your insurance. Just in case one of your teams falls down, it doesn't cost you on the spread betting and the parlay. It depends on how strong you feel about those, because sometimes people will use them as an anchor. I like one of each.
So it's interesting that you say how strong you felt about them, because I will tell you, I felt like a fish out of water the whole time I was looking at teams this last week. I just didn't know what I was doing, and it's obvious I don't know what I'm doing because I'm brand new, but I don't know. I just felt like everything could have gone either way, and I didn't really have strong feelings either way. When I had to make my free bets, because I either had to make them or I was going to lose them, so I chose the Bills at -3 and the Seahawks at -6. Now, both of those came in for me, but I really was just stabbing in the dark. Like I just didn't know what to do. I was really perplexed this weekend.
Well, first of all, because this is a good strategy that you employed, how much did you get back for those free bets? They were $5 bets, right?
Right, I got $4.55.
Okay, and that's cash. That's in your account now.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So you've converted, because initially you've converted a free bet into real money. That's a nice thing, because you actually had to sign up and then get your free bets and use them. Now, a couple of good things here. We talked before that, you know, you've identified yourself as a chalk bettor, that you have picked out that segment of the market that you like to play the favorites, and the Bills came through for you, and so did the Colts against the Bears. So that was very good, and you had those $5 bets on those teams. So the other ones, most of the time in pro football, when they put those lines up, they're envisioning a 50-50 game. You're supposed to be confused, because that's about where the line is, where the game should be. When they put it up, they say, where is this likely to finish? And they were right there. For instance, two games last week landed right on the spread. That was the Baltimore Ravens against the Washington football team. That was 14 points, and it ended that way. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Los Angeles Chargers by 7, and that was the Sunday morning line. So two games ended up right on the number. That shows how good they are at doing that. So understandably that you couldn't find an edge. There wasn't many to find last week.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm not sure that comforts me. I will say that my Colts bet was actually another $10 bet, and I did that because DraftKings again had a 20% profit boost on any game if you opted into it. So I feel like when I'm getting these boosts or something, I should try to find something to play if at all possible. And the week before, the Colts did well for me, and I just sort of went with it.
Yeah, that is exactly right. I spoke with Johnny Avello from DraftKings earlier today, and we were talking about how do the bettors overcome the VIG, that 10% disadvantage, the house edge that they have to lay for their bets. And for the smaller bettors, the people under $50, which is where these bets really come in, that's a great way to take away the house edge, because you get a 20% profit boost. That's one way you can wipe it out. There are also odds boosts that come out through the week that you can take a look at, which are very good on the small side. And that's very important to take that 10% edge and put that back in your pocket, especially when you multiply that over the course of many bets. So that is exactly how you should be playing right now. They were good moves.
Yeah, but I didn't bet with any strategy or with any certainty, though. I mean, in the end, I picked what I felt was the close, I can't say that I truly felt it, but I guess I was closer to feeling it with those bets than anything else. I guess that's the best way to say it. But the funny thing is those are the ones that came in for me. The ones that I thought I was going to do well on didn't do well.
But the ones you had a good feeling on did come in. And this is what we talked about on our very first episode. Now, this week I took a look, and it's the CBS sports model. Okay, we play the game 10,000 times, and we tell you where we think the game is going to end up. So last night they said, well, we think the Packers and the Falcons game is going to go over. Well, it went under. So this is played 10,000 times, and they're giving you a hunch on 10,000 times because a computer doesn't have a feel. Right. Only your gut is where that feeling is. And I think that's a very important thing for people, rather than saying, well, so-and-so says, or this touting service says. No, you paid attention to your gut. And we've talked about that all along, and that came through for you.
Well, my gut needs to have a conversation with the Eagles and the Panthers, because my gut told me that they just couldn't do it, and here they came up from nowhere. I just needed the Eagles to last one more week.
However, you had a lot of company in that Eagles bet because you got them at 7 points San Francisco was giving. On Sunday afternoon, that bet went up to 9. So you got that bet on sale. You got San Francisco giving 7 when someone later took them at 9. Nobody really saw that coming. They all see it the next day. Oh, yeah, San Francisco was banged up. Oh, yeah, San Francisco had their third-string quarterback in. Well, then why didn't you bet it on Sunday? Monday, it all looked great. Now, I'm going to tell you something about the Eagles this week. The line this week surprised me a lot. I thought they would be maybe a 3.5-point underdog against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they're getting 7 points for that game in Pittsburgh. And that surprised me, and I'm leaning on making a bet with the Eagles. And FanDuel this morning had it at 7.5 for a little while on the Eagles, and that's a very important half of a point if you can get it. People are not giving them credit for the win over the 49ers, and that shows that could be your edge. If you feel it, that's how you get ahead of the sentiment.
Should they be giving them credit for the win over 49ers, knowing that the 49ers are so banged up?
They should, because the Giants got beat badly by the 49ers, and so did the Jets. And they got beat by multiple touchdowns. Therefore, and they also should be giving them credit because the line said San Francisco was -9. So if the line says San Francisco -9 and you win that as a 9-point underdog, then they should give you credit. However, they are not giving the Eagles credit, which is why I want to lean into them for next week, just on a little bit of a momentum angle with the way they match up against the Steelers. They may not be winning that game, but if you give them 7.5 points and they're in first place now in the NFC least, they might be able to cover that.
The NFC least, you crack me up. Okay, so I have another question for you, and we've talked a little bit about over-unders. I've seen a lot of people talking about over-unders. I don't know if that's typical or not, but I remember you saying how the scoring in this season has been higher maybe than usual. And so I'm wondering, when you're looking at an over-under in that situation, how do you know whether that fact is taken into account of the over-under? And at what point do you think maybe the points are just high to not get over? But it seems like the overs are coming in a lot, but I have a feeling they're going to keep raising that line.
Yes.
And
that's,
so
some
I'm just
good instinct, Kimmy.
I'm trying to figure out how to analyze that, or how to look at that.
Well, that's some good instinct, because what happened now last week, 5 games ended up in the 50s, 3 ended up in the 60s, and the Cleveland Browns and Dallas Cowboys ended up with 87 points. That's more than any game all of last year. And I believe the reason for it is that the pass defenders are behind the receivers now in terms of their coordination. A lot of times you see receivers go into the deep part of the field, and there are 2 people covering them. There's coordination between, say, the safety and the cornerback. They're not talking to each other the same way. Receivers are breaking open, and these long passes are being completed. That's one. The other one is there are fewer holding calls being called this year in the NFL. Offensive holding, which happens on every play, when it's called a lot, it moves a team back into their territory and it slows down the scoring. If you don't make those calls, then teams are holding and quarterbacks are getting more time to throw the ball. Now, as far as the points going up, we're seeing now more point totals in the 50s being projected. The books are still adjusting to that. So if you're a bettor, you still have an edge on the books over that because they're guessing the same way you do. That doesn't happen very often. This has surprised the books as well. So you have an edge if you have an inkling. What I've always loved to do with over-unders is I like to watch the first series of the game, watch each team's defense one time, and then I'll make an in-game bet on the over-under based on if I think the team showed up that day. Because if you watch the Cleveland-Dallas game, the first series, the defenses were so pathetic then that it was a good time to take a little shot on the over. Going in, it's always a tough call, but I like to watch one series and then make a decision.
So do you ever bet the over-under before a game?
Yes, I do, but smaller. And based on do you think there are 2 good offenses, or do you think that there is a team that, like for instance, the Chicago Bears do not score many points. They're usually a very good under bet, and they were 30 points was their game against Indianapolis last week. That was a good defensive team against a bad offensive team. So you sort of have to rank it in your mind. Are there 2 good offensive teams? Then you lean to the over a little bit. The Green Bay Packers they're on a bye this week, but they've been over 40 twice and then over 30 twice. So you look at their tendencies. Seattle Seahawks, their games have been going over, and I like them on the over a lot because of the style of play. Russell Wilson likes to throw deep passes. They're not really a conservative team when they need to be. So if you want to evaluate teams during the season, try to get an idea how many times they run the ball, because running the ball slows the offense and makes the clock run. And you just get a sense of which teams have a tendency to play more aggressively.
Okay, so I feel like that was my big lesson of the day.
I want to also take you on another little side road from our homework assignment last week.
Okay.
You know, you bet $2 and you took 4 teams on the money line parlay.
Yes.
Last week, a DraftKings bettor took $1 and took 12 teams on the money line parlay, 12, and hit it for $1,200.
No way.
$1. Yes. This is an avenue. Your homework assignment, well, that person took the homework assignment very seriously and took 12. Now, in order to hit that, this person took some upsets, including the Eagles over the 49ers as a 9-point underdog. So that's well-deserved payout to make
that's
to make
fantastic.
some picks like that. How do you like that? Wow. So you were onto something with that homework assignment.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because I was actually thinking of playing a parlay, but only picking underdogs because, like trying to find 3 or 4 underdogs that I feel good about and trying it for $1 or $2 because I am fearful. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I can look at 2 teams and think someone's going to win. And then look at the point spread, and if it's reasonable, then of course I would pick the winner because I think they're going to win, and it's, you know, less than a touchdown, so that seems logical in my mind. But when I'm looking at a game and the points and trying to rationalize placing a bet on the underdog, I don't have a good feeling about that point spread. And knowing that the team is going to lose, but it's okay if they lose as long as they don't lose by so many points, I can't wrap my head around that yet. So I thought I would take an exercise of just picking, you know, I don't know.
Well, that I like the idea, but if you do, are you talking about on the money line or the spread?
Like the money line, like pick like 2 or 3 underdogs that I think are going to win the game.
Okay.
And then see what happens. I don't know. I haven't thought it through, but
if you do that, be sure to back it up with one thing.
Okay.
A money line, for instance, if a team is a touchdown underdog or 8 points like the Eagles, if they win the game, they give you a payout of close to 3-1. So rather than, I mean, you could try that, but you'd hate to waste those underdogs.
Yes.
Like, what if you had 3 out of 4 underdogs and you didn't get all 4? You can make that, but also take a couple of side bets on those underdogs in those games, because if they win, you will get a very nice payout. You'll get 2-1, 3-1. If you have a sense of the underdog, I would say back that up with a money line play just on that team, because that will be a wonderful payout if you are correct.
But you just made a really good point. In doing the parlay, it doesn't make sense not to do the point spread with the underdog, right? It makes sense to take the underdog and the spread because you have a little bit more leeway. They don't necessarily have to win than to make the parlay come in.
Well, now that's the point spread parlay you're talking about, which is a different bet from your money line. So the money line, you're going to get maybe a 2-1 return or 3-1 return if the team wins the game outright. With the spreads, well, the payments are less, but you are getting the points, you know, to help you on your spread bet. So you're always going to be paying for points.
I see.
When you get points,
it's the opposite. I get it now. It's the opposite as the underdog.
Sure. Well, for instance, I mean, this is going like way into an orbit we may explain later, but I was watching your Cardinals against the Jets this week, okay? Now, they opened up at minus 7.5 on the Cardinals, and that's plus 105 on the money line to do that. If you want to put them at plus 6.5, you can buy that point, but now it's minus 130. So you're paying a lot of points to get 1 point up spread. So I don't like the game anyway, but I'm just saying if the relationship, when you buy a point from a sports book, it can be expensive.
Yeah, I have to take a break from betting on my cards because it's too heartbreaking.
Make them prove themselves to you first again. You know,
That's
they started out
right.
great.
I'm used to this with them, though. You know, I've been a fan for a long time, and so they always have periods of greatness interspersed with periods of, what are you doing? So.
Yes. Well, now one pattern you can say, maybe the Cardinals are not a good road favorite. Now, they were giving 3.5 points to Carolina, and maybe they're a better team at home. You can start to factor things like this into it. If you're a 9 or a 10 win team, maybe you're going to cover on the road when you're laying points. I think they won 5 games last year, and they maybe have the look of a team that might win 9. It still might be asking a lot for them to cover laying points on the road. So that's just a nugget that you give yourself as you're observing their data along the course of the season.
So does the being on the road or at home matter as much if there aren't if there aren't fans in the stands?
Maybe in the case of a team going from West Coast to East Coast, some teams handle it better than others. Because that game for the Cardinals was at 10 o'clock in the morning for their body time. That game against Carolina. It's 10 o'clock in the morning again when they play the Jets. Some teams, San Francisco handled it well. Seattle has handled it well. Some teams do not handle it well. And it doesn't seem to bother you as much going West Coast to East Coast, because East Coast to West Coast, because you're picking up 3 hours. It's right. Okay. But when you do that, I mean, I know when I've traveled over to London and my body clock is off, my stomach is off, because you're going, and now that's 6 hours, but you're losing time. So that's just one factor.
Interesting. So what games are you interested in this week, Dave?
Well, I'm going to be taking a hard look at the Eagles against the Steelers. It fits into my philosophy of a good team playing another good team and getting 7 to 7.5 points. And I'm saying good meaning they are in first place and they just did defeat the 49ers. So I have to give them points to, like, going into Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh didn't play last week. Some teams think a week of rest is good. I think it affects your timing and maybe you're not quite as sharp. So that's the angle that I will play into that game. I like that. Now, for your viewers, I compile every week for the sites, and I'll have it for your Play West Virginia also, how everybody's doing against the spread. All the top leaders. And right now, those teams are the Green Bay Packers, the Seattle Seahawks, the Buffalo Bills, and the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals are 4-0 against the spread, even though they've won 1 game, because they get points most of the time, and they're covering. Now, keep that in mind. They're playing the Baltimore Ravens this week. They're getting 13.5 points. That might be a lot for a team that is improving. And I'm tempted to look at that game, too. That is an awful lot of points to have to give to a team in the NFL when there really is no home field edge for the Ravens. So they're the teams who have been doing the job against the spread. Okay.
I feel like I don't know what to do this week. I just feel like I have just a little bit of information that makes it the water all muddy, I almost wish I didn't know anything anymore.
Well, that does happen, but that's what happens with all the information. So what has to happen is, with everything out there, you narrow that down based on what you've seen and what you have felt. And it already came out for you last week with those 2 later bets. And if you don't feel something early, even make a smaller bet for what you post up on the video for people. If it's early in the week and you don't have it yet, you can say, hey, I'm betting light in the very beginning of this week, and I might make a bigger bet on Sunday. Most people make their bigger bets on Sunday when they see the lines move and they wait for an injury report. These things matter. And also, there's a coaching change in the NFL already. The head coach of the Houston Texans has been fired, and he's been replaced. So you could think that the Houston Texans, who have not covered this spread at all, they're going to have to show up against the Jacksonville Jaguars because their jobs are on the line, okay? Basically, if the coach gets fired today, you might get fired tomorrow. I'm waiting for them to show up. They've been very disjointed, Houston Texans.
Well, I will say that I have been doing much better in my later bets because I feel like I have time to sit with it a little bit more.
Yes.
I actually think that might be a strategy I'm going to employ this week, that I'm not going to do any early bets, and I'm going to do my bets closer to game time, like maybe on Friday or Saturday when I have a little bit more time, because it's the middle of the work week for me too. So, I'm trying to bet and get my work done and, all of the other things like that when I have time to just sit with it, it seems to be, it's working out better. All of my late bets are coming in. My late bets are what's been saving me the last few weeks.
That's good. And you're doing it within a pattern. You have been a chalk bettor, and you're keeping your spreads under 6 points, and you're betting teams in that range who you feel will come through. And I think that's a great overall approach. It's tough when you start to give more than a touchdown if it's not a great team that is laying those points. There's so much left to chance.
Yeah.
So it's a strategy, and nobody should be forced to make their bets on Wednesday or Thursday. Most of the big bettors don't make theirs until Sunday. And you're a big bettor now, Kimmy, because you bet every week. So.
Yeah, last week I won 2 cents. This week I won lost $1.98. I'm like, these are big, huge amounts we're talking. But I think I think I'm okay with trying things because I know I'm keeping it small right now, and that allows me to sort of do things because I don't really, to be honest, I sit there and I look and I think I have a game plan, and then I look at things and I have no game plan. Let's be real.
How many games are you able to watch on a Sunday? Are you able to watch? Or are you working at other things? That's a
little bit of, I probably don't sit down and watch full game after full game because, I'm doing laundry or getting ready. Now this week,
yes.
I have some commitments that are going to get in the middle of it, but I try to watch as much as I can, and I will tell, you're going to laugh at this, but like when the Cardinals are performing badly, I can't watch. I have to turn it off. It makes me sad. Sure. And I think that I think I'm the jinx. I think we talked about this the last time. So I tend to turn off games that aren't giving me the result that I want.
Well, I can tell you, in the middle of a baseball bet that I made yesterday between the Houston Astros and Oakland A's for the playoffs, I jinxed the A's. I turned it on because I had the over, and they hit into a double play. It went right off. And the game covered. They got to 15 runs, and I had it at like an 8.5.
But only because
I can't afford to watch. I'm hurting these guys.
Because it only happened because you turned it off.
I totally agree with that. Hey, by the way, there's a bettor last week on one pick. He picked the over for the Jacksonville Jaguars Cincinnati Bengals game, and he teased the line down from like close to 50 points down to 42 points. So he paid for it. He bet $1.4 million on the game.
Dollars?
$1.4 million on one bet inside of a game.
Dollars?
You believe that anymore?
$1 million?
Yes.
No.
$1.4 million.
Who would do that?
He said, how can you do that, right? Then He said, well, I've already got Kimmy's 2 cents, so I'll put that into the total, right? These people are betting just unbelievable amounts. I mean, this is but it also shows up something about, we have the line. We talk about the spread line, which is big. But these other lines, if you fool around with these other side journeys, they're also going to give you some information and different ways for you to make some money. Now, we've talked about 2 of them on this show, which is the $1 parlay for $1,200 and the $1.4 million. So, people are doing crazy things.
Well, I think that one of the reasons why I like the parlay bet homework assignment last week is I find I stay focused on the games where I have money, obviously, right?
Yes.
And if I'm keeping my money on just a few games, I'm not really expanding to get a feel. But just like the week before, I bet that ridiculous bet on the Colts at -11, I think, and won because I just felt like they were much better than the Jets at the time. But now so then when it came time to bet again, I bet on them again, much more reasonable point spread this last week. And sure enough, they came in. So I feel like just dabbling in some of these teams that I don't know for $1 or $2 isn't really hurting me, but it's giving me exposure to the team. And so I feel like I just need more exposure because I don't really still know enough about things.
That was the idea when the professor gave the assignment for you to.
You're a smart cookie, Dave.
If you like that. Now, for instance, you can take that. Let's say you make another bet like that in a couple of weeks or even this week. All right, maybe it's not going to return that much money, but you could roll that over the next week. Say you make $5 or $6. Roll it into the following week. Try to hit it again. And maybe the Colts are your team right now. Maybe you're just on them. Some teams, for some reason, you just feel them. You just get an idea of how they're playing. Now, they have a very good defense, giving Phillip Rivers a running game to go to cut down his mistakes. Now they're playing in Cleveland this week, and that's a 3-point spread again. And that's going to be a really fun game because you have a great defense against a very good offense. And I kind of can't wait to see that game.
So one of the reasons why I started doing the early bets is because I wanted people to see my bets so that they knew I was really making them. So what I think I'm going to do, because I think I'm not going to bet early this week. I think I'm going to hold off my bets until the weekend, and I will put my bets out on my Twitter account. So if anybody wants to verify that I'm really making the bets I'm making, I'll go ahead and put them on my Twitter account, and I'll have that link if anybody wants to follow me down below to see what I'm really doing. That way, I just want people to know that I'm really learning and doing this as I go along.
Well, what's so far? Is there anything in particular you feel that you have picked up on in these? You have a winning percentage of over 500, by the way, including your extra bets. So, yeah, you're doing better than the average.
So here's what I've been doing on the weekend because I've been betting because of there's some sort of bonus or boost, and DraftKings has been really great about putting stuff out there in the weekend, and it's usually not available until after the Thursday night game is how I've been finding it. So that's why I started betting closer to the weekend. But I think what I found there is the point spread seemed to be closer, and I sort of just been looking at teams that I feel like I have either seen perform well or are performing well, and then I go and I do a little confirmation bias checking just to see if I'm like, am I crazy? So I'll go read a couple of articles. I tend to go to thelines.com, which is one of our sister sites. So I know the people that are running those sites, so I feel like I have a little bit of trust there.
Yes.
And so that's sort of what I've been doing over the weekend. And then I'll go look at last week's performance with the team I'm thinking of, see who they played against, what I thought about that team. So I'm just sort of looking at the information that's just around the game. I'm not going really deep into anything, but just the surface information. And sometimes it's just I don't know, and then I move on. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I think I can do this, and I bet. I don't know that I have a strong gut feeling about it, but it's not an anti-gut feeling.
Right, and you have a psych. You have a certain. This would be like having a certain spot on the roulette wheel. You have a certain spot in the spread cycle that you like those teams between 3 and 6 points. That has been in your wheelhouse so far. You have liked to bet. That's what you've had the best inspiration and feeling on. And the other good thing about these other side things, especially if you put them low, a lot of people, as they start to get more comfortable with betting, I call it the giddiness angle, where you say, hey, I want to just throw something on here because I want it. I just want to have some fun. And I think that has to be accounted for in one's budget a little bit, because that is human nature. And as long as you account for it a little bit, then you're fine. So I think you're doing very well. And I like your idea of betting closer to Sunday because nobody should have to be locked in too early.
The other thing I noticed with the weekend bets, now with the 20% profit boost, I bet $10 because it's just 20% only on the profit. So it's not really like you're making a lot of money on such a small bet, right? But I like betting a smaller amount. I mean, I know that $10 isn't that big, but like $5 to me seems, it's like, okay, I can put $5 at that. It doesn't, I don't know. I feel like when I get smaller, I'm willing to take more chances. Not that I'm betting big anyway. It's sort of crazy. The psychological aspect of all of this is really crazy.
Yes. Hey, the other night I took a $2 in-game bet just because I had to. I said $2. All right, and then I hit it. And what do I say? Why didn't I have 20 on it? That's the way it is. There's never been enough money ever placed on a winning bet. But remember, you're operating in a season-long budget of $500, which is $30 a week. And then you have the first week where you didn't like anything, so you've got that, to tap if you ever need to. But you need to make this last until January.
Yeah.
So it's not that you have to be scared money, but there's no need to lunge at something unless you love it. Because we talked the first week about if you hit between 45 and 55%, that's about what the average might be. So your profit will be determined by how big you go on the bets you hit and how little you go on the bets you don't hit. Yeah. And so, being cagey like that is very smart. You're thinking long term, and that's why you'll still be here in December.
I hope so. I hope so. Okay, any last words of advice for me before I go back out into the jungle?
Well, I think you stay with the game plan that you've been doing. You've identified your market segment. Have a couple fun little side journeys just because they put a little emphasis on more teams. And, I say there's a lot of big spreads this week. I'm a little curious to see if some of these dogs are going to cover. I'm going to make a small bet on the Eagles regardless because I just like that in my formula with that. Win, lose, or draw, it factors into the way I like to play.
Okay, Dave. Well, again, I think I'm not going to make any early bets this week. I'm going to wait till closer to the game time. I like having the time to let things mull over. I'm a ponderer, so I'm going to do that. And again, if anyone wants to see what my bets are, I'll have them up, sometime before the games begin on Sunday on my Twitter account, which is @Kim Yuhl. It's down in the description. And yeah, I guess that's it for today.
Yes, it is. Good luck with it. And we're in the second quarter now. Second quarter of the season.
I made it through the first quarter without a heart attack. All's good.
In fact, you have a lead after the first quarter.
Whew, that feels good. Well, let's hope we can make it a little bit more good start to the second. Okay, Dave, I will see you next week. Thank you again so much. I always love our chats.
Me too, Kimmy. Good luck. You'll hit a few.
Bye.